Hi, I'm State Senator Jamie Eldridge. Welcome to another edition of Half Hour on the Hill. My guest today is Kelly Jenkins, a teacher and constituent of mine. And Kelly, thank you so much for coming on my show.
No, thank you.
And I know that I was on your show 3 years ago when we discussed the legislature passing the transgender rights or transgender anti-discrimination bill. And just really admired your courage and your bravery to tell your story then. And I think we had a little conversation back then about, that this might not be over, right? That there might be a push by those that support discrimination based on gender identity to go to the ballot. And so here we are in 2018. And those that disagreed with the law that I was proud to vote for have the ballot item 3, question 3, that would, if it was a no vote, it would repeal the public accommodations protections for transgender people in Massachusetts.
When you say it like that, it's a little bit overwhelming.
Yes.
I sit here, when I met you 3 years ago, I was at a true high in my life because moving to Massachusetts, I found that I could be my authentic self and be employed in a school system. Mm-hmm. And rather than it being a shameful thing, it was actually celebrated in my school system, and it is to this day.
That's wonderful.
So while I appreciate this life that I've created in Massachusetts, I am acutely aware of the fact that come November 6th, those rights, those protections, those things that make me feel safe in this state may be taken away from me. And I know that when we had our conversation 3 years ago, mm-hmm. you gave some advice to me about, if the opponents do get this put onto the ballot,
yep.
that mm-hmm. here's some things that you should do. You should go talk to libraries. You should go talk to religious institutions. Mm-hmm. You should go mm-hmm. talk to anybody that will listen. And I've been doing that, and as I've been going to these different places, I've discovered in this wonderful state that I'm not alone.
And that's really good to hear. You feel like you've gotten support from the places you've spoken at.
Yes, I've spoken in Chelmsford, I've spoken in Lowell, I've spoken in Billerica, I've spoken all around this state of ours. Mm-hmm. And the thing that I've realized is there are people here that want me to keep my rights, that want transgender people's rights and dignities to be upheld. And right now, while I'm sitting with you, I am positive that there's 20, 30, 40, 50 people mm-hmm. that are out there right now doing the same thing, working probably even harder than I am at it.
Well, you are working hard, and I know I was just about a month ago, I was at the rally, Yes on 3 rally in Copley Place in Boston. So, hundreds of people, all ages, all backgrounds, speaking in support of equal rights that should not be repealed by question 3. So you're not alone, we're not alone, and that's great to see. But it has taken this level of advocacy because I know that, especially what we've learned over the past 2 years is not to take any poll seriously, whether it's a national poll, state or local. And that, in the beginning of this effort by the petitioners to put this ballot question to hoping to repeal the public accommodations protections, that it initially was a very, very close poll. So we have to take that seriously, and we need to tell your story and talk about the importance of making sure to protect everyone's rights in Massachusetts.
I feel like that you're not only protecting transgender people's rights, but mm-hmm. you're just kind of saying we're Massachusetts and we're here to protect human beings' rights, that we have a level of civility in this state and we understand that everyone deserves the opportunity to be a productive citizen of this state without hindrance to whether or not they can go to a grocery store, whether or not mm-hmm. they can go to a doctor's, whether they can get health care. And when you were talking about the rally, the Massachusetts Teachers Association was there, which with me being in public education, mm-hmm. that was a huge support for me. It was like, absolutely. Okay, wow, I have people here in Massachusetts that are supporting me. And the polling, like I ignore polling. I'm pretending like I'm losing right now. Yep. And I'm just going to keep fighting and fighting and fighting because there's little kids that are 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, and all the way up to 80 years old in this state who are transgender that just want to go about their lives. And I don't
Absolutely.
want those little kids to go through what I had to go through when I was in Tennessee.
Absolutely. And I'm sensitive to the fact that I don't want to, bring up too much from the past, but I will say when, we sat down for your show 3 years ago, talking about, your experience in Tennessee and then how you felt coming to Massachusetts, even before, we passed these protections. So I'm wondering if you might be able to share a little bit, not too much, whatever you're comfortable with, about what your experience was like in Tennessee.
When I lived in Tennessee, I moved up here 4 years ago from East Tennessee. I lived the first 49 years of my life in Tennessee. And I learned to keep who I was secret from everybody down there because I needed to have a job. I did want health care. I did want to be able to go out to movies and places like that. So for the first 40 years of my life, I presented as a male because I bought into the system down there that if I was my authentic self, I would never be employed or anything. And so I became ashamed of myself.
Yeah.
I started not liking who I was. I would look in the mirror, I would see the person that I wasn't, and I stopped becoming a productive member of society. That's scary because I have dreams, I have ambitions, and I have goals. And one of those is to be the best teacher that I can. In Tennessee, I was a licensed middle school science teacher, just like I am now in Massachusetts, but I couldn't find a job down there as a teacher. They would find out that I was transgender. Once I transitioned, I was still trying to find teaching jobs, so I was a teacher presenting as a male. Lost my jobs when they found out about me being a transgender woman who was about to transition. And then when I transitioned, I was being stubborn. I'm a very stubborn human being. I went to the same school system and applied at different schools in that system and was rehired. Well, they found out about me again, let me go. Me still being the stubborn human that I am, I went and applied again and was continuously hired back, but they would find out about me and let me go until I couldn't do it anymore emotionally. And when you can't be your authentic self and you can't, I love teaching. That's really one of my passions. And when I couldn't do that either, I lost a lot of hope in society. And I always knew in the back of my mind that Massachusetts was, in my mind, from East Tennessee, one of the most progressive places in this nation.
Which I think it is.
I do too, I think it is. And I came to New Hampshire and volunteered at a camp up there that helps transgender youth. And it changed my life.
That's amazing.
I saw people here in Massachusetts being their authentic self who were transgender, who were succeeding in life, who were still having discrimination because when I moved here, there weren't laws here to protect them, but they were still able to figure out a way to be their authentic selves, and the discrimination was far less up here. I moved up here a month and a half after volunteering at that camp. Didn't know a soul up here except for 1 or 2 people I met at the camp. In Massachusetts, the citizens of this state welcomed me. Someone said that I hardly knew, come live with us until you find a job. Come live with us until you find a home. I had never met one of them. The other one, I had been there for a week at the camp, and that's how long I knew them, and they gave me this opportunity.
That's wonderful.
And I came to Massachusetts, and it was the smartest move I've ever made,
That's
besides
wonderful.
transitioning.
Yes, of course. That's terrific to hear. And you said that, I know when we interviewed you, you were teaching, and now you're a licensed teacher in Massachusetts?
I'm a licensed educator in Massachusetts, a middle school educator. I don't have my teaching job yet. I work in a school right now as a teaching assistant.
Okay.
But I don't have the teaching job because, my license in Tennessee did not transfer up here, so I had to start the whole process over again. So this past April, I got my license in my hand saying, congratulations, you can now go teach middle school science in the state of Massachusetts.
And that's terrific because you're contributing, you're educating children, you're giving back to the state. So we are so happy that you're here.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
I hate that I had to put finding the job as a teacher on hold. Me holding on to my civil rights is more important than me teaching children right now, because I can't teach children if I can't get to my employer because I get discriminated against somewhere. And it's just, this is very important to me to not lose my rights.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's something that I can't entirely appreciate, but just listening to your story, is something that other people, hopefully will read about and follow about. I know that the Lowell Sun just did a story about you speaking to a congregation in Chelmsford, so spreading the word is really important.
That was your advice to me.
Yep. Well, I'm appreciative you took my advice. And I'm just curious, since the law went into effect in 2016, so it's been 2 years now, what have you observed any changes, or how do you feel personally, or how did the law, anti-discrimination law, impact you in your life?
The one thing that having this law here to support me, one of the big things that it did was it gave me this ability to feel safe everywhere I go. Mm-hmm. In Tennessee, I was refused service at restaurants. Sat right down with a friend, waiters, waitresses saw me, wouldn't serve me. I've been asked to leave a place for using the women's restroom in Tennessee. Mm-hmm. So I know what it's like to be discriminated against. And when I moved up here and this law went into effect, the first thing that I felt was safe. Mm-hmm. For the first time in my life, I'm like, I'm safe. This state cares about me as a human being and understands that all I want to do is be a contributing member of this society and live my life like everyone else. So that's the beautiful thing about it. This one little line that says gender identity on this long list of protected people has made me feel safe in this state, safer. I moved up here. I could have picked any state in this nation to have moved to from Tennessee, and I picked this one because I knew it had one of the best education systems in the nation, and I also knew that it had, like I said, progressive people here.
Sure.
I didn't know I was going to get the mother lode and then get my gender identity added to the list of protected places or protected people.
That's wonderful to hear. I appreciate you talking about that, and I do have some more questions about that. We're going to take a break right now, and we'll be back in a moment with the next segment of Half Hour on the Hill.
Today is the beginning of a bright new future for this country.
I won't live a life on my knees.
The voters are coming.
Welcome to the second half of Half Hour on the Hill. I'm State Senator Jamie Eldridge. My guest is Kelly Jenkins, constituent of mine, teacher. And we've been talking about sort of how you have felt not only moving to Massachusetts, but since the transgender anti-discrimination law passed and is become into effect since 2016. And what you said is just music to my ears about how welcome you feel here, how you feel safer. And it's interesting because I think for me, it sort of brings back some memories I have of when same-sex marriage was made legal in Massachusetts, which was by a court decision, and we spent 4 years defeating a anti-gay marriage constitutional amendment. And after that was addressed, after that amendment was defeated, to me it just sort of seemed a feeling of peace and serenity in the state. Is that my constituents who were a man and a woman who were married, and my constituents who were same-sex couples, that they had equal rights, they could go on and live their lives. And in many ways, I didn't hear about it as much. Now when I meet a same-sex couple, it's in many ways not a big deal. It's something that just makes sense, and that's their life, and that's their privacy, and they can go on and live their lives, and obviously be safer and be more secure and better take care of their children if they have children. So that that in many ways is sort of what I've seen with the transgender rights bill passing, is just a greater sense of peace about about a wide variety of people, including people who have different gender identity. So I go to my Starbucks now, I go to the supermarket, and I see more people who are transgender, and it's not something, for the most part, that people ask about. It's just something that is part of society, and that's wonderful to see.
That's the way it should be. I mean, I like the fact that you said that same-sex couples now aren't as excited about, like, it's not necessarily passé, because we understand that we are a minority, and that
Absolutely.
we are beholden to the majority to understand that we deserve equal rights. And so while we do have this sense of safety, for me, I understand that I can't take it for granted, and that the beautiful thing about the United States and Massachusetts and states' rights and all of that is that I can fight for my rights here. I could leave Tennessee and come to this state and move 900 miles away and come up here in the worst winter that I can have ever been a part of, which is found out was a normal winter up here, but it seemed pretty bad the winter of 2014-15. And that gives me hope. That's another thing that I have up here is hope. I dared to get a teaching license in Massachusetts, even based on my experiences in Tennessee. And to know that there's a legislature that has already fought these battles for same-sex marriage and prevailed, that is another reason I picked this state, just because everything about this state that I have seen so far has been that we want to try to be the best that we can for everybody. I mean, and I can't even put into words what it's like that might be taken away from me.
Absolutely, and I can't imagine personally what that feels like, and I'm sorry about that, and that's why I've been very active, to support the Yes on 3, to reaffirm what the legislature passed. And I would emphasize, in the state Senate, it was passed unanimously. It was a bipartisan vote, so it was both Republicans and Democrats, and I think that's an important point to make. That being said, on the federal level, in a very scary way, the Trump administration has been trying to remove transgender right protections for children, for certain, accommodations by Education Secretary Betsy DeVos. You have a vice president who was the first sitting vice president to speak to an anti-LGBTQ convention. So it's really scary what's happening at the federal level. I actually didn't think that would happen. I sort of thought that, LGBTQ rights, gay rights was sort of settled topic as of sort of the election of President Barack Obama, but it's not. At the national level, it's going in reverse, and that's why it's so important for Massachusetts to stand up for its values.
It's been doing that since the beginning, hasn't it, Massachusetts? The way I think of it is this state kind of started it all a little bit for this nation, thinking progressive thoughts, thinking outside the box, thinking bravely. And I just want to stay here. I don't want to leave this state, Jamie. I moved here with the intent to live the rest of my life here. And I don't want to have to even think about, oh, should I go back to Tennessee because now it has the exact same laws of level of protection for me as Massachusetts does. That's a scary thought. I talked to a friend of mine the other day in North Carolina, real world conversation. She asked me, what happens if your rights are taken away? What happens if you lose? I'm like, well, I guess I'll move back home and fight for my rights there. And she said, no, you can't. You'll be murdered. And
that's real. Yeah.
That's real. And that stopped me in my tracks, because that's my friend from the South saying, I love you. Don't come home.
Yeah. And we know in many states, there is a disturbing, evidence of crimes against transgender persons. It's, including murder. It's very scary. We don't want that to happen here in Massachusetts.
It's trickling down from the top. It's trickling down from the federal government, like you said, and people are emboldened. But I guess I had to expect pushback, because anytime you try to do the right thing, there's somebody that doesn't want you to do the right thing. And that's what I feel like I'm doing now. I'm battling the same opponents up here that I battled in Tennessee. I'm battling misinformation, I'm battling hatred, I'm battling fear-mongering, I'm battling religious ideology, I'm battling just downright hatred at times.
Absolutely, and I know we were talking a little bit earlier before the show began, is that in the Republican primary for governor, about 35% of the Republicans, or those who voted in the Republican primary, voted for a Scott Lively, who is a self-described anti-LGBTQ pastor who was running for governor on the Republican ballot. So the fact that there are that percent of at least those who take a Republican ballot who were very comfortable speaking with someone who very clearly oppose LGBTQ rights, and that's in Massachusetts. So that's very scary. I've certainly gotten emails and calls from some constituents, a minority constituents, but from some constituents that wanted me to either support a repeal of the 2016 law, or they wanted me to vote against it when we passed it 3 years ago. So that is also real, and that's why your work talking about your story and talking about how you feel safer now is so critical.
Well, thank you for doing the right thing and not listening to that small minority of people that said, don't give me my equal rights. I'm assuming that the people that don't want me to have equal rights, that don't want me to be able to go to a restaurant without having the ability to tell me to leave, that don't want me to be able to go to a doctor, I don't think they understand the repercussions that has elsewhere in this nation. Everybody's watching Massachusetts and the LGBTQ community right now. Massachusetts is front and center with all of the country as far as, is Massachusetts going to say, yes, we uphold these individuals' rights? Or is Massachusetts going to say, no, you don't deserve them? And whatever Massachusetts does will have effects elsewhere in the nation. And so when I said to my friend, when she said, what will you do if you lose your rights? And I said, go back to Tennessee. Where would I go, Jamie?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. This is, in my mind, the place that I chose because it was the wisest decision. And I'll find out November 6th whether or not I made a wise decision or not, which I hope I did. I hope I did.
Me as well. Me as well. And when you talk about the implementation of the bill, and Attorney General Maura Healey has highlighted this, as well as a lot of individuals in law enforcement. There hasn't been a single incidence of crime reported because of this public accommodations law. When I think about my daily life, going to get coffee in the morning, visiting a friend at a business, obviously coming here to tape ActonTV, those are all public accommodations. If suddenly that protection was no longer there for transgender persons, that would dramatically affect your life. But also, and I appreciate your point of making this, it would affect everyone's life. It affects commerce, it affects people's safety, it impacts the basic interaction that is the core part of society.
It costs North Carolina a lot of money to put their law into effect, saying they have a law in North Carolina that says that I have to use the men's restroom.
Yep.
That has repercussions. That had financial repercussions. And Massachusetts is not North Carolina. I know it's not. I know it's not Tennessee. I know it's not Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia. I know Massachusetts is Massachusetts.
Absolutely, and I think really a core strength of Massachusetts is the diversity, whether you're talking about ethnic diversity, racial diversity, immigration, sexual preference, gender identity. That's all sort of the richness of Massachusetts, so people can all contribute like that you're doing.
It's amazing. I go to my school that I work at, and I talk about the diversity at my school, and my coworkers were like, I don't see diversity. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking, I'm from East Tennessee, so I'm sitting there talking to people of the Jewish faith. I see people wearing hijab. I see LGBT people being openly LGBT. I see people with disabilities being teachers. I see all of this wonderful diversity at my school, and it makes me smile that they're like, diversity? Because it's there and it's with them.
Right.
Whereas me coming at it from an outside point of view, where conformity was the big topic that you had to follow when I was in education in Tennessee, I couldn't tell a soul that I was transgender. No way could I tell a student that I was transgender. And now in Massachusetts, in my school system, I actually was with a class today, a 7th grade students, and I sat down in front of them and we had a health class on transgender identity.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And to put a finer point on that, in this area, including the Shirley-Acton area, there was a congressional race, open congressional race, for an open seat, and a transgender woman, Alexandra Chandler, ran for Congress. It was wonderful to see. And also, I will say that I saw a number of transgender high school students that were volunteering for her campaign. So that was great to see. I've never seen that before in politics, even in Massachusetts.
It's a lot to do with the law, making it be safe for us to do this. I have friends here in Massachusetts, lots of friends that are transgender, that very much appreciate the hard work that it took for this law to go into effect to make them feel safe, because they do know what discrimination was like here in Massachusetts also.
Absolutely.
And now they understand that they have protections, that if someone discriminates now, it's against the law.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for coming on my show, for telling your story again. I know that can be difficult, for speaking out. And I want to close the show and say that I'm urging all of my constituents, voters across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, to vote yes on question 3, to reaffirm public accommodation rights and protections for transgender persons.
Thanks
again.
so much, Jamie. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for watching Half Hour on the Hill. And again, I'm State Senator Jamie Eldridge, joined by my guest, Kelly Jenkins.